morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice Radio. So today, well, I've actually got another one of those Japanese cards to talk about. The ones from Sword and Shield, and it's another trainer card, and it comes from the same source as before, which, as I've said on a number of occasions, I trust very much indeed, and I believe. So, what is it, and what does it do? Well, it's not quite Muscle Band, but it's not far away from Muscle Band. According to my source, it is an item card, a tool, that reads: the attacks to the Pokemon this card is attached to deal 10 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Now, I opened up here saying that this was a lot like Muscle Band, and it is a lot like Muscle Band. Or, I suppose to be more precise, it is a lot like half of a Muscle Band. Because literally it is half of a Muscle Band. Muscle Band was a tool you attach to a Pokemon, you do 20 more damage to the active. This is a tool you attach to the Pokemon, and it does 10 more damage to the active. But like I've talked about in a couple of videos recently, we could sit here and go, well, you know what? It's not as good as Muscle Band. Okay, don't play it in Expanded, where we still have Muscle Band. But outside of Expanded, it's irrelevant because we just don't have any options that are as good as this. This is a brilliant card. This is going to see a huge amount of play, and the reason very simply is we don't have anything better. Well, no, actually, that's not strictly true. There is one thing we've got at the moment that I actually like quite a bit more than this, and that is Beastite. You see, Beastite I like very much indeed. It is a new tool that's just come out in Cosmic Eclipse, and it reads: the attacks of the Ultra Beast this card is attached to do 10 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon for each prize card that you have taken. So if you're playing an Ultra Beast focused deck, yes, this is amazing. I mean, you take one prize, it's as good as this new tool. I don't know, let's call it Wassy Belt. But as soon as you've taken more than that, then it's just better. And that's kind of my point here. This is great for Ultra Beasts. So if you're playing an Ultra Beast focused deck that is only playing Ultra Beasts, then you're not going to play this new tool. But very few Pokemon are Ultra Beasts. And if we have a look at the other options we've got, they're fairly uninspiring. Now, if you are a Lightning Pokemon, we do have Electro Power. Electro Power is really good, but it's an item card and you're limited to 4 in your deck. So you can do an extra 30 damage, but then it's gone, rather than doing an extra 10 turn after turn after turn. And of course you can combine them. Combining them is good. And similarly for fighting Pokemon, we've got Martial Arts Dojo that lets you do an extra 10 damage, and let's not forget Diancie Prism Star that lets you do an extra 20 damage. Although Martial Arts Dojo actually will rise to 40 if you're behind on prizes. So if you're a fighting deck, you're probably going to be playing those. As a side note, Diancie is for fighting Pokemon. Martial Arts Dojo is for any Pokemon that isn't an Ultra Beast with basic fighting energy attached. So you're going to play those in fighting decks, but there's no reason to not play this as well, unless you're relying on Karate Belt, and if you're behind on prizes for Martial Arts Dojo, there is a strong shout that you might be playing Karate Belt here, because you get to do the same amount of damage, but for less energy, and I don't know about you, right, but doing more damage for less energy, that sounds good. I'm all in favour of that. We do also have Hustle Belt at the moment, for what that's worth. Now, it does let you do an extra 60 damage, which is great, but only if the Pokemon is attached to has 30 HP or less and some damage counters on. If you're playing Spiritomb, where the entire goal of the card is to use its own ability to get damage on and then start smashing, yes, obviously, you're going to be playing Hustle Belt. If you're playing a Pokemon that can survive with like 10 HP remaining, let's say Marshadow and Machamp with their GX attack, then yeah, cool. But outside of that, it's not really a great option. And let's be clear, right, doing extra damage is always good. For the last couple years, the inarguably best tool has been Choice Band. And the thing is, you do an extra 30 damage only to EXs or GXs. whereas this just lets you do 10 to anything. And Choice Band, I mean, it wasn't even close, right? Choice Band was absolutely phenomenal. The only thing was that you would find the odd deck you'd come against that didn't have any EXs or GXs, that was very much just non-GX focused, and yeah, okay, in those situations it was kind of a dead card, but outside of that, it was phenomenal. And doing extra damage, right, is always good. These cards always see play. I mean, a little while ago, we had the aforementioned Muscle Band. That saw a huge amount of play. Did 20 more to all Pokemon. And in Expanded, sometimes people still do play Muscle Band over Choice Band. The question really is the matchups in terms of what you're worried about. Some people will go Muscle Band because they want to be able to do the extra damage to a non-GX deck, which is a particular matchup they're worried about. And a little way before that, we had Silver Bangle, which was very similar. It did 30 more to EXs, there were no GXs back then, but it only worked when attached to non-EXs. Which was weird then, because when Choice Band came out, I had a whole bunch of people telling me that I'd mistranslated it, that it only worked on non-GXs, but essentially it was people presuming it would be like Silver Bangle. And Choice Band was a lot better than Silver Bangle. But they both saw a huge amount of play. Devoured Field let your Dragon or Darkness Pokemon do an extra 10 damage. That was pretty good. That saw a fair amount of play. And we have actually had a tool in the past that did an extra 10 damage. It was Fighting Fury Belt. And now it also gave an extra 40 HP. And there was a strong argument that that was the better part of the card. And it could only be attached to basic Pokemon. There was a fairly large caveat in terms of who could use it, but essentially any basic focus deck had to gravitate towards Fighting Fury Belt here because it was phenomenal. Extra damage is always good. Hypnotoxic Laser, automatic poison and therefore damage, saw a huge amount of play. Even Professor Kukui did an extra 20 damage, let you draw 2 cards. Even that saw a huge amount of play. Now, to be fair, Giovanni's scheme didn't see anywhere near as much play. You could either draw until you had 4 cards in your hand or do an extra 20 damage, but there wasn't that big a gap between Giovanni's and Professor Kukui, and even in the gap that there was, and Supporter doing an extra 20 is not necessarily quite good enough. But tools and items and stadiums that do extra damage have just always seen play. And I know that on the face of it, this card seems a little bit underwhelming. I know it's not as good as Choice Band, although it can hit non-GXs, so there is an argument. And I know it's not as good as Beastite, but that's only for Ultra Beast. And I know that it is objectively literally half as good as Muscle Band, but Muscle Band rotated years ago. And to be fair, this tool should not ever see any play whatsoever in Expanded, because we've got Muscle Band. And unless we rotate through X and Y, this tool never stands a chance of seeing any play in Expanded unless it's played by a player who cannot find any Muscle Band for sale or cannot borrow any. Okay, but the majority of our formats are in Standard, and World is in Standard, and in Standard we don't have a better option. As a side note, why does it only do 10 more damage? Tag teams. The simple answer is tag teams. Because if you let tag teams are already doing a ridiculous amount of damage. If you let them do too much more, it gets out of hand. But there is one interaction here which is absolutely huge, and that is Reshiram and Charizard GX against Pikachu and Zekrom. Because Reshiram and Charizard does a natural 230. Since we rotated Choice Band, it really has been overtaken by Pikachu and Zekrom, because they cannot get a 1-hit KO, and Pikachu and Zekrom are better set up for 2-hit KOing. Now it can. Now, to be fair, cards like Mega Lopunny and Jigglypuff are, unfortunately, pushing Pikachu and Zekrom out a little bit. But over in Japan, where they've got all of the cards from Cosmic Eclipse, we are still seeing a fair amount of play from Pikachu and Zekrom. This will give Reshiram and Charizard a phenomenal boost. Make no mistake about it, it's underwhelming compared to some cards we've had in the past, but compared to cards that we have at the moment available for play in our Standard format, It is absolutely phenomenal. And it will see a gigantic amount of play, because as I've said time and time again in a number of different videos, doing extra damage is always good. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen, a very new tool card, a very good tool card, a card that's going to see a huge amount of play. I can't prove it, I can't show you an image, but my sources have been pretty reliable in the past. I trust them. I hope you do too. For now, I'd like to know what you think about this new tool, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't even have any Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.